Welcome to another episode of TRP. I am Remy here with my better half in his, I don't really have anything against the Chicago Bears, but in his Chicago Bears hat, Ruben.
It's baseball season. Oh, wait. That doesn't make sense, does it, that I'm wearing this hat?
No, it doesn't. You're wearing your orange and blue, so I guess that's as much sense as it's going to make.
Agreed.
As Ruben's a Mets fan. We had, unfortunately, a lot of things that kind of preempted us being able to do the show as quickly as we like to do on a weekly basis, mostly work-related. I got shipped out to Connecticut, and Ruben was pretty stacked with work as well.
Sure, we'll go with that.
And by work, do we mean dates? Do we mean...
No, that is clearly not what we meant by that.
That was not a Robinson Cano home run?
Well, hopefully we have about 30 more of those this year.
Or at least 15 until he gets nailed for PEDs.
Wow. Starting off on a good note this time.
Yeah, Yankees fan. We did want to talk about spring training. So the fun thing about spring training was the Yankees had the highest winning percentage in spring training.
Oh, boy.
I know. Paper champions, here we go. But that's, I guess, as much as we're going to get to about spring training since opening day was yesterday. Both Ruben's Mets and my Yankees were victorious.
Yeah, the Mets, I think they're 37-20 all time. I think they have the best opening day record, and it's pretty much the highlight of my season.
I still can't tell what the Yankees will do because I'm 90% certain Ruben, myself, and our listenership could probably beat the Baltimore Orioles right now.
Rough.
Yeah, I feel bad for the O's. I'm not sure. I know he cost a ton, but I'm not quite sure whether I keep trotting Chris Davis out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you live off of the memories of a previous great year, eventually you could get a $330 million extension.
Oh, those are some nice digs, aren't they? Are you booing as well?
I am indeed.
So for today's show, since we can't really go into depth about something that already has been over with spring training, and we'll have more as the season progresses on where the teams are at as it begins. But a lot happened in the past couple weeks that we weren't really able to touch on. And most of it's going to pretty much start and end with the just onslaught of extensions that occurred. Mike Trout got that 12-year, $430-ish million extension. So he's making around 38-ish million a year.
Yeah, 35, 36, somewhere in there.
Yeah. And the weird thing about that was I saw a lot of fans online complaining that he has such a rich contract, and I think that that's absolutely insane.
What are the big complaints about it?
He's making more than a lot of, I think that's the richest contract in sports, but yeah. Granted it's over the length of time that it is. But, he's making more than football players, hockey players.
But that's always been that way.
I know. The man is literally the face of baseball. He's arguably the greatest player in this generation and possibly, I'm not overselling it, but possibly of all time.
Yeah, he's an all-timer.
In 1,065 games, his slash line is 307, 416, 473 with 240 homers. The guy averages about 37 home runs a year.
Yep.
648 total RBIs. I think he averages just a shade under 100 RBIs per season. 793 runs, 189 stolen bases. He gets upper 20s, lower 30s on average of stolen bases.
He's a plus defender.
No player in history has put up more wins above replacement through his age 26 season than Trout's 64.3. I mean, who in sports? I'm not going to just label this to baseball.
Okay.
And there's certainly going to be arguments. LeBron in his prime could definitely be one, Jordan. But I'm just saying right now as it stands, who is more valuable to their sport and who is as dominant to their sport as Mike Trout is? And I think he flies under the radar because it is baseball and because he's kind of a low-key guy.
Well, baseball just has a lot more revenue than a lot of other sports, and it's got to do with TV contracts, and it also has to do with the amount of games that they're playing.
It's true, but that's actually, it's not a misnomer per se. The NFL makes more than every other sport by a good fair amount. And I actually have pulled up these numbers recently. I don't have them off the top of my head, so I do apologize because I like to have my stats when I'm making a declarative statement. But nobody touches the NFL. We're talking billions upon billions upon billions. The Major League Baseball is still popular, and if you break down the games, there's not a whole bunch of well-attended home MLB games as per se.
Sure.
The NBA
the
or
80,000 that you get out on a weekly basis for for an NFL game on in Chicago or wherever not.
There is about maybe 20,000 per home game for NHL and NBA fans versus maybe 20 to 30 for some of the middle performing MLB teams, because I'm sure the Rays are well under 20,000 or the Orioles, depending who they play. So it's not necessarily just that with baseball. I mean, there obviously is the more home games and things to have and to bring in revenue. 100%. Sure. I don't argue that.
But you have more limited rosters in baseball as opposed to football.
It's true.
So I think you get 53 in football, and then in baseball you're limited 27.
The new rules haven't taken in place, but 26 on your major league roster.
26. Okay.
Or it's 20. It's 25 right now. It will be 26.
Okay.
It will be 26. That's a rule change. We talked about that before coming up. But I mean, Trout's worth it. I mean, he's the face of a franchise. Absolutely. I wanted to post a recap video actually when I was in Connecticut, but my phone did not want to cooperate. So here we are after the fact. And another huge extension, and I do want to go into this one because we've talked about Mike Trout as probably the best position player, overall baseball player right now. But there was a long, not kind of cantankerous relationship per se, but your Mets had a lot of issues as it pertains to Jacob DeGrom, Cy Young Award winning Jacob DeGrom. His own teammate Noah Syndergaard was like, "What's going on here? Why did we not lock this guy up?" And the Mets had some time with him before finally locking him up to a 5-year, roughly $137.5 million extension. I mean, there's been a lot of other extensions, and we'll get into those in a minute. But DeGrom won the Cy Young last year. He posted an MLB best 1.7 ERA. His former agent's the Mets GM. Like, how do you overlook this for that amount of time and now just pay the guy? I mean, I'm glad they did, but.
Yeah, well, I think they're following suit. There were so many other teams that set the precedents before that where they're signing their players. And I know we're going to get into a few of them, but we talked about Trout already. We got quite a few others that we will get to, the Sales and others amongst them. And I think they set the precedents that it's more prevalent to sign your players before they could potentially hit free agency. And sure, you're taking a risk because when you have them under team control, you could potentially see, are they going to fade? Is there going to be an injury concern? Is there something that's within our control now that we can account for and risk mitigate? But there is a precedent to sign these players. If they continue to perform at expected levels, then he does come probably cheaper now than he would if he hit free agency in a couple of years.
Oh, 100,000% he would. Absolutely.
And with all the alligators and the crocodiles in the water, and he looked fantastic in his start yesterday, as opposed to another guy who signed a big extension.
Well, we'll talk about that guy because I will relish that in a moment.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. But I mean, yes, he's been dominant, and I think what they're saying. I think teams like the Mets, especially, who have a modicum of success, but are known for having success and then flailing, and sometimes flailing ugly and falling on their faces, even where the clown's looking at them and says, that looks funny. I think that there's this onus on these sorts of franchises to say, A, we're committed to being a players organization where you can trust us. And I think that's important because if you struggle previously and the perception is that you're kind of clownish, then you have to change how you treat your players, what the expectation of treating players is, how do you attract people to take a look at you and to consider you seriously, which they should because they're in New York City.
Absolutely.
And it also signals to the fans, hey, keep buying tickets because we're trying to win right now. And so I like it, especially for teams that are in that sort of rebuilding our kind of perception of who we are and how we run things with a new GM as well.
Well, that's a good point. And now just kind of continuing on, just since we're talking about extending a franchise pitcher, these two gentlemen are a little bit older, so their deals, make sense for them. But what we kind of alluded to a minute ago, is Chris Sale being locked up by the Red Sox for 5 more years at $150 million, and the Astros' Justin Verlander signing on for 2 more years at $66 million a year. Those are, and I am lumping them together. I don't want to go quite as in depth with these guys, but it's interesting to me because, I mean, Verlander kind of had a resurgence in Houston, so I do appreciate that about him. And, Chris Sale, the Chris Sale part does surprise me a little bit. Maybe it shouldn't, but he's a guy who's had some problems with his velocity, and that was actually seen last night where he got torched. And I don't think he's going to be garbage the whole season as much as I would gleefully like to proclaim it or something like that. I don't think that's completely indicative, but he's had a whole host of injuries. I feel better about the short-term Verlander deal than I do about this 5-year extension for Chris Sale. And, they're both Cy Young caliber pitchers. They're both high strikeout pitchers. They're both, when they're on, some of the toughest pitchers to even remotely contend with. How do you feel about each of those deals? And do you agree or disagree that Verlander deal is going to end up looking a lot better than that Chris Sale deal?
I don't necessarily agree. There's concern with Sale, but he has a track record of performing. I mean, he's probably been in the Cy Young race, 4 or 5 years in a row now?
Yeah.
So it doesn't concern me. What concerns me, does the lack of, or the loss of velocity concern you? Of course it does. You can't invest. I mean, I don't have anything in this, but if you're an owner, I mean, sure, I would be like, what's going on? Let's talk. Let's get Brady's a dietitian in here. Bring in Alex Guerrero and let's put him on the TB12 system.
And I can't talk but so much because the Yankees just, we talked about in a previous show, extended Severino, and he's out on the injured list right now. But it's different to me than somebody who had some nagging injuries like Verlander and giving him an extension. And for him, he's a short-term extension. Yeah. He's not done by any stretch. He's still a top of the rotation guy, an ace. But you gave him a nice short-term deal. And then you look at the flip side with a Chris Sale who is known for injuries and who that velocity is being looked under a microscope because he's a very tall, very thin, very lanky dude. And, from all accounts in great shape, but you have to worry about, the durability.
Yeah. I'd like to see how this plays out. I don't have too many concerns. I'm sure it would be different if I was a Red Sox fan. And maybe you gleefully, as we have alluded to, are optimistic that his arm might actually fall off on a pitch. Perhaps.
I honestly don't wish injury on any player. And, if that's their best, I always want the Yankees to beat the best. But I've enjoyed watching Sale pitch. He's a competitor. He's one of the best pitchers of this generation.
Oh, his strikeout ratio last year was unreal. I think he was striking out somewhere close to 12, 13 people an inning. Or an inning. That would be impressive, wouldn't it?
Well, that could have been last night. Maybe, not an inning. But.
All 4 of you out there, don't don't come back at me with this. Don't at me. I don't even know what that means.
On the Twitters or the Facebook?
The what?
The Twitters.
Tweezers?
The Twitters or the Snapchats.
Oh, is that like one of those? Well, I shouldn't talk about the websites I was about to.
No, we'll skip Ruben's browser history and we'll go to somebody who I am thinking is a good extension for. I wish, as Ruben chokes to death on God knows what. Matt should be happy about this. The Cubs extended Kyle Hendricks for 4 years, $55.5 million. Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic reported. And Kyle Hendricks has been top 3 finishes in. Well, he has been in Cy Young consideration, but
a couple years ago.
He does get bonuses if he's in the top 3 in the 2020 Cy Young voting. Kyle Hendricks he's 29 years old. He's been a steadying force in the Cubs rotation. In 2016 is when he placed 3rd for the Cy Young Award, so I was somewhat on track. He had pitched 190 innings of 2.13 ERA baseball that season. He's a great middle of the rotation piece. He does feature a less than stellar fastball, but is ranked highly in Major League Baseball in terms of average opponent's exit velocity off of it, which is about 85 miles per hour.
How do they? I mean, wow.
Exit velo, bro. Exit velo.
No, I get exit velo, but they actually have a stat that's judging the exit velo off of a person's particular pitch.
They do, and
that's crazy.
And the dude's spin rate on his curve is actually amongst the best in the game. He's in the upper 89th percentile. So I mean, he's a great pitcher to lock up. For 4 more years, he'll be 33 years old, so he won't be past his expiration date.
Just $13.5 million a year on that contract. That sounds like a great deal.
I think that's wonderful, and I think another great deal. Again, we're just trying to lump some of these.
Yeah, I know what you're about to go to now, and this is a great deal.
Cy Young winner Blake Snell was wrapped up for a 5-year, $55 million. That's $10 million. It's $50 million. 5 years, $50 million, because I can speak.
And how many is that per year?
That is $10 million a year.
There you go.
I can't talk. I mean, since 2011, he has been very, very dominant. I don't like seeing the guy. I don't like facing the guy. He's 26 years old, so he's going to be still well within his prime during that time frame.
Yep.
Just because I'm not happy about it, you automatically know it's a good deal.
That's a crazy deal. Like, I mean, his metrics last year were phenomenal. I mean, his ERA was just slightly above DeGrom's ERA. I think he was like 1.88. DeGrom was at 1.70. He strikes out everybody, and he's one of those people. I think his batting average against was extremely low. He walks a few more than some of the elite when it comes to control. But when you're a batter, who wants to go in against somebody who's a little bit effectively wild, and who he has a kind of a slingshot motion? Crazy. I would hate that. It would be John Kruk's worst nightmare coming true again.
No, the guy's phenomenal. I did pull up his 2018 stats off of MLB, and yeah, you get a 1.89 ERA. I mean, he played 31 games.
Look at those innings pitched and hits allowed. 180.2 innings pitched and 112 hits allowed. That's insane right there. So the hitters were hitting 178 off of him last year. Awesome.
A little bit under a walk per 9. I mean, yeah. I mean, you can't really argue, and to lock him up for that amount of time when that quality of a player.
Yep.
Tampa Bay does some good things if they can lock up young talent like that. I mean, they competed. They won 90 games last year.
I wonder what his. I mean, what does Blake see in that deal? Because he's worth so much more than that.
Protection. I mean, I want to talk about. I want to talk about one more extension, and then we'll kind of go into some trends.
All right, let's do that.
The last one I want to talk about that had happened was Alex Bregman got locked up for 5 years, an extension with the Astros for $100 million, which is the second longest deal in Astros history, behind I think it was $151 million for 5 years for Jose Altuve. Alex Bregman's one of the premier third basemen in Major League Baseball. I think he's very under the radar. He's a big personality, rocks the number 2 for Derek Jeter, so I like him. That's another just great, I think, signing to keep somebody. I mean, $20 million a year is great for somebody who can do, average 286, 51 doubles, 105 runs, 31 homers, 103 RBIs, 96 walks, an OPS of 926.
And the best part, 24 years old. Awesome.
Oh, he's 25 tomorrow, so happy birthday, Alex Bregman.
Hey, Alex, we know you're listening.
Alex Bregman loves this show, probably, as far as I'm telling people.
He does now.
He does now. I will add him on the Twitters and see if
on the tweezers. Got
on
it.
The tweezers. So I mean, that's another just fantastic deal for another great young player, and the Astros have done a great job of locking these talents up.
I mean, talk about an organization that has. Remember when we were talking at the start of the show, at the top of the hour, if you will, we were talking about changing the perception of the team and what you're about for both the players themselves and for the fans, and that is probably the golden child of the modern way of doing that in Major League Baseball today is the Houston Astros. And they're going to be relevant. What would you say? I would say they're probably going to be in the race 4 or 5 more years at least.
I would say so. I mean, it depends on what they do with their pitching and how things pan out because, Keuchel's nowhere currently. We'll get to that too, actually.
Yeah.
But, Keuchel's gone, Morton's gone. I mean, they got Verlander and Cole top in the rotation, so that's going to be a dominant 1-2 punch for 2 more years at least. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that for at least
Altuve, Correa, Bregman. Oh, that's George
Springer, Cole back. Oh, that's great. No,
I think we're the only ones who get that.
Yeah. No, well, go back in other episodes and take a listen and see if you know what we're talking about. But I do want to talk about these trends now that, I cannot remember seeing at any point this many extensions being doled out in this amount of time. Like, to me, that's absolutely unheard of.
Yep.
And we've seen the past 2 years with the way the free agent market has been.
It's been slow.
There has to be a correlation in my mind that, people are saying, oh, my God, I might not get paid what I'm worth. Let me take as much money as I can now on this extension and get paid.
Oh, my God, I might not get paid what I'm worth. Or, oh, my God, it's not worth the stress of waiting as long as some of the people have to wait for. And then you have a Keuchel out there.
And that does turn into that.
And Kimbrel.
You have Kimbrel and Keuchel still out there. So, these players could be seeing like, oh, my God, these are all-star caliber players. These are, phenomenal. Well, in Kimbrel's place, he's to me, the best closer in baseball right now, and he's not signed. And Kimbrel's still a solid mid, maybe a high 2 pitcher that's worth having. I mean, blows my mind with injuries and things that Keuchel wasn't signed at the moment. I will give an update and say I've seen different reports saying that the Brewers and Braves are talking to Kimbrel, but
please go to the Brewers. Please go to the Brewers.
Oh, Mr. Bet over here. But whose Wheaties did Keuchel take a leak in that nobody's offering this guy a deal?
It's weird. It's hard to even speculate what the thought process is. Free agency develops so slowly. The extensions are handed out with two, sometimes 3 years of team control left, and then you have free agent all-stars still out there.
It's mind-blowing, but our next topic might kind of tie into this a little bit in terms of spending money. So there was an article written in The Athletic by Mark Craig talking about that the MLB has confirmed the existence of like a replica WWE World Heavyweight title that they're giving in recognition of a baseball club's salary arbitration department that did the best at basically doling out the least amount of money. And MLB has confirmed that the title exists. That's kind of a horrible message to send to players, like that you're relishing and taking pride in the fact that you're not paying out people.
and whoever leaked this is, there are probably hitmen from each of these organizations that have pictures of whoever this is, and that person may never speak again, because that's a terrible. Again, to harken back to what we were talking about, talk about a player de-enthusiazer. That's got to be, if you find out that your team is on that list.
I don't like this, and this happened a few years ago. Not the title being handed out, but I saw this firsthand a few years ago when Dellin Betances was going through arbitration, and he wanted to be paid like a closer. And the Yankees president Randy Levine was saying that he thinks he's a closer. Well, does he think he's an astronaut, or mocking him for wanting to get paid? And I don't understand the mindset of teams treating their players like they're the enemy, like they're garbage. Pay your people. It's who we come to the games to see, or whose jerseys we buy, or I don't get it.
Well, I get frugality. I understand trying to run a business with dollars and cents in mind, but to openly say that this title does exist and it's rewarding the team that's basically getting the better of its team control player in the arbitration process is just not something that you would want to be known for. I'm sure anybody would be embarrassed who's associated with this if it were proven to be true that this is out there. And, it's a bad look.
The finalists for the title belt are apparently the Houston Astros, Atlanta Braves, Chicago Cubs, Cleveland Indians, Tampa Rays, and Minnesota Twins.
A lot of good teams in there, and the Twins.
I think the Twins are going to win the Central this year, but maybe we'll have a breakdown on next show.
Actually, there's a lot of favorites on that list. The Astros are a favorite. The Braves won last year. The Cubs are a perennial favorite. The Indians are a perennial favorite.
The Rays have no chance.
And the Rays have, but they did sign Blake Snell. So
yeah, so they won that,
and they got a great team-friendly contract.
The champion will be named at the MLB winter meetings in San Diego.
Wow.
So that'll be quite the spectacle. Ladder match for it between the teams?
Yeah, well, there are no players at the winter meetings.
Yes, there are.
Are there?
Yeah, players show up to the winter meetings all the time. The GM meetings, there's not usually players, but if it's the actual winter meetings, then yeah.
Yeah. God,
Players are there.
Is Kyle Murray there?
Kyle Murray is there. Kyler Murray is not there. That's the difference.
Go back to another episode again.
Let's go back. That one. We will have apparently nothing but in-jokes for you to
There
follow.
will be a quiz, people. I don't know how we're going to, get it out to you all, but there will be a quiz.
There will be a quiz. We'll eventually do giveaways and stuff when I go to the Flying Squirrel Stadium and acquire some swag. Maybe we'll do that. The last thing we want to touch on, not a major move, but a known player. The Oakland Athletics had acquired Kendrys Morales from the Toronto Blue Jays for a minor league prospect infielder, Jesus Lopez, and for about $1 million in international bonus slot money. It's interesting. So the $1 million in bonus money available to Toronto that was sent over to them is probably one of the main factors of the deal. The reason Oakland even would acquire Kendrys Morales is their first baseman, who's a great player, Matt Olson, went down. He underwent, I can't even begin to explain this procedure or pronounce it, but he had an injury to his right hand. I think that suffices. That happened in the second game of the Athletics 2-game set against the Mariners in Tokyo, which also saw Ichiro retire, which was...
Yep, I watched that.
That was a heck of a career, a heck of a player. So Kendrys Morales, I mean, he's a decent fill-in. He's a veteran switch hitter. 2018, his slash line was 249, 331, 433 with 21 homers. His ability to play first base, if you've watched him in recent years, not the most mobile first baseman. But I guess for a little bit, just to pitch in, I mean, from all accounts, the guy seems like he's a good clubhouse presence. Is again good veteran leadership. Hopefully he can help out Oakland and keep him afloat till Olson comes back.
Yeah, I've got not too much to add to that. A good veteran presence.
Well, I mean, isn't that why your team got Cano? Good veteran presence.
Oh my gosh, but he can hit. The bat speed's still there.
The bat speed is still there. Robbie Cano, I will say, had one of the sweetest swings I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yep.
So right now, I don't know if you realize this, but with one game in the can, our two New York teams sit atop their respective Eastern divisions.
Let's call the Subway Series again. Let's right now. No, you're not going there. Okay.
I'm not willing to commit to another Subway Series. Not to say I would not love to see it.
Well, we would be there.
We would. I definitely would be there.
I'd be there.
Ruben and I will go to a Subway Series game should that happen for the championship.
At Yankee Stadium or Citi Field?
Dealer's choice, whichever ticket is the lowest.
Probably Citi Field then.
Well, I don't know.
Well, they both actually Yankee Stadium holds more people, so then we might get a little more luck. I don't know.
Let's not put carts before horses or round the bases before homers.
Yeah.
Is that a good way to put it?
Round the bases before homers.
Round the bases before homers. Next week, we'll have a little bit more sort of analysis on how the first little bit of the season's going. Not much, obviously, to go on, but if there's any reporting or analysis that we can do, and maybe Kimbrel or Keuchel will finally sign.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Maybe there'll be an injury here, a concern there, and that could certainly change the team's outlook.
And hopefully by next week, I can finally get this podcast up on iTunes and Google Play Store, which have been fighting me vehemently. I can't pronounce that word.
Vehemently.
There we go. Once I speak slower. Been having fun times with that. But, we thank you for listening to this show. We'll be back next week. And, Ruben, do you want to do the catchphrase?
Always be a fan.